Genesis 41, 31 to 36. And Joseph continued in his interpretation of his dreams, of Pharaoh's dreams. And we will continue to read and see what happens. Verses 31 to 36 in Genesis 41. Now, starting in verse 30 and continuing in verse 31, Joseph said, all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land. That's how we finished off. And the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of that famine following, for it shall be very grievous. Nobody's going to have anything to eat. To make sure that Pharaoh fully understood the urgency of what Joseph said, he added, and for that the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh. It is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Now, the repetition of that dream in two different forms was actually designed by God to show the absolute certainty and urgency to prepare this 14-year period starting now. Joseph, in the role of being a true prophet, next gave God-inspired advice, starting in verse 33. Now therefore let Pharaoh look for a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Whoa! So Joseph was so sure this was going to happen, these good years followed by these really, really bad years, that he said, look, you gotta hire a guy that's gonna be able to handle this. As it is improbable that Joseph could have foreseen his own promotion, consequently, he gave this advice without any reference to himself. The counsel, therefore, was either immediately inspired by God as he described the dream, or it was dictated by careful deliberation, again, as he was describing the dream, and good common sense. Joseph suggested Pharaoh hire an exceptional person to have unique authority to prepare for the future crisis. But then Joseph suggested a doable and innovative plan. Let Pharaoh do this. Do what? Hire this guy. And let this guy appoint officers over the land, take up a fifth part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years. A fifth part of all the produce, of all the grain. Whoo! People would probably complain about that. But no. So no one could do this alone. This special officer that Joseph suggested, directly representing the king, should be allowed to appoint other overseers to enforce that double tithe, that 20% of the land's produce. Now, it isn't clear whether the collection of a fifth of everything that farmers grew was a direct tax or something purchased and stored by the government. Either way, because of the overabundant plenty of the time, man, overabundant it really was. The people could pay this increased tax without feeling oppressed. That's only 20%. Do you know how much we pay up here in Canada? Now, I do feel oppressed. For what I earn, everything I earn, the more I make, the more I am taxed. My son-in-law is taxed 44% of his income. So 20% is really not very oppressive, is it? But I digress. And then Joseph continued, and let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up grain under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. Now, when I read this, in the cities and under the hand of Pharaoh, well, under the hand of Pharaoh is an interesting expression. It really means that the grain became Pharaoh's property and only sold and dispensed under his orders and by trusted overseers. Furthermore, food was to be reserved in the cities throughout the land against the years of famine. Now, archaeologists have gone through Egypt several times, as you know, the Great Pyramids, the Tomb of the Kings, and so on. No remains were found of grain silos like we have here in Canada and in the United States. Grain elevators that hold all these grain for some time that when we can't grow very much. Yes, we have a reserve. But in the cities suggests an underground network, possibly tunnels or caves to hold the grain. You know, some archaeologists have actually confirmed and found this. Wow. In the cities. And then Joseph said, and that food shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine. Folks, only by the grace of God could Joseph have foreseen the barrenness of land 7 years beforehand. Yes, it was Pharaoh's dreams. All Egypt would have perished with the famine if the king, that's Pharaoh, by Joseph's advice, had not commanded an edict, a law, a proclamation that the grain and produce of the earth should be preserved for the next 7 very plentiful years. The aim was to save as many as could be saved. Do you think people during those 7 plentiful years were willing to give up 20%? Well, it was so plentiful that the 20% meant nothing, really. And like I said before, wouldn't be considered oppressive, considering you have that much and you can only eat so much. Now, at the time of this writing, we are experiencing an extremely underrated global epidemic, also called a pandemic. It is unprecedented in scope and electronic monitoring. It has an incredible survival rate of 99.98%. That's hardly a pandemic material. Yet, Our country has been shut down for over 5 months. Everything was in quarantine and lockdown conditions. And this was enforced all across the world globally. In addition, wearing a facial mask is strictly enforced when traveling around or just going from place to place. This could indicate that a world leader could enter the stage and set things right. This could indicate that Christ might return sooner than we think, especially at the speed of the global enforcement. So, if you as a Christian and me have noticed this, what are you doing about it? We could openly witness about our precious Savior, so to bring as many into God's kingdom as we can. And that's what we should be doing. Or we can be paralyzed with gripping fear. Oh, woe is me! What are you going